He was the leader of a country so big, it covered 11 time zones. And yet, Joseph Stalin often didn't wake up until noon. So, who was actually running the Soviet Union while he slept? He was the most feared man in the country, but he lived a very private life. He ate late, slept even later, and made sure that no one around him ever felt safe, not even his closest friends. He changed school books, crossed out names with a red pencil, and once held a dinner where people who didn't laugh enough were never seen again. He changed the future of half the world. But what did Joseph Stalin actually do all day? Joseph Stalin didn't just run a country. He put on a show, with himself as the smart, kind, and powerful leader. But the truth was very different. He was short, just about 5'5", had one arm that didn't work well from a childhood accident, and his face had scars from getting sick as a kid. But in pictures, none of that was shown. Artists made him look taller. His skin looked perfect. His weak arm was never visible. He had teams of people to fix photos, change books, and even erase people from old pictures, people he had sent to jail or had killed. If you made him angry, you didn't just disappear in real life. You were erased from history. Stalin controlled everything. What people read, what they ate, where they worked, how they spoke, even what they believed. In public, he called himself Uncle Joe and smiled next to children and farmers. In private, he sent thousands of people to prison or death with a simple check mark on a paper. But even with all that power, he lived in a simple way. No gold palaces, no crown, just a few quiet homes with thick curtains, locked doors, and guards at every corner. He liked dark rooms, soft slippers, and silence. People feared his quiet more than his yelling. Sometimes a smile from Stalin meant you were safe. Other times, it meant your days were numbered. The mustache, the army clothes, the calm voice, it was all an act. But it worked. Even his closest helpers didn't know what he really thought. And that's exactly how he liked it. Joseph Stalin didn't wake up early. In fact, he didn't even wake up at a normal time. Noon was usual, sometimes even later. His workers, guards, cooks, and helpers had to change their own times to match his. The whole country followed Stalin's clock, whether they liked it or not. This strange routine started in the 1930s, but got worse during World War II. While German bombs were falling on Soviet cities, Stalin often stayed up all night and slept through air attacks and army news. Army leaders had to wait hours for answers because their leader was still asleep. When Stalin finally got up, he took his time. He smoked, read the news, drank strong tea from Georgia, and sometimes just sat quietly. No one dared bother him. He didn't show up to work until 3 or 4 inches the afternoon and still expected everyone else to be ready. This strange sleep pattern wasn't because he was lazy. It was about control. By keeping late hours, Stalin made sure no one around him ever felt calm. His top men had to stay awake, always ready for a call, even at 2 inches the morning. He might ask for a report at midnight or call someone to meet him long after bedtime. One man once joked, "Under Stalin, sleep was a dangerous habit." He didn't like surprises, but he ran a system full of them. Only he decided when the day started and when it ended. While the country worked in daylight, Stalin ruled in the dark. And no one ever dared ask why. Most people eat breakfast in the morning, maybe eggs, toast, or coffee. But Joseph Stalin had his breakfast around 4 in the afternoon. By that time, he had already been awake for a few quiet hours, reading papers and smoking without talking to anyone. When food came, it was never small. Stalin didn't eat quickly or lightly. His first meal of the day was often big with meat, soup, cheese, fresh bread, and even strong wine from Georgia. He liked food from his home country, things like cheese bread, chicken in nut sauce, lamb stew, and pickled vegetables. He liked strong flavors like garlic, Every part of his meal was checked for poison every time. Stalin worried a lot about someone trying to kill him through food, so he had trusted cooks, guards, and tasters. Some people say he even had a second taster in case the first one got sick or died. He often ate alone, reading or listening to music. Other times, he invited close officials. But these meals were never friendly. No one joked around. Everyone sat stiff and quiet. Even a small joke could go wrong and send you far away to Siberia. One day, Stalin might raise a glass and toast your good health. The next day, he might sign the paper to have you arrested. His meals were not just about food. They were part of his act, a way to show power. Everyone watched him. No one felt safe. And once the plates were cleared and the wine was poured, that's when the real work began. By the time Stalin sat down to work, most people in Moscow had already finished a full day. But his office at the Kremlin was just getting started. The room was dark and heavy. Thick curtains blocked out the sunday. His desk was covered with papers. Ashtrays were full of old cigarettes. Maps of the Soviet Union covered the walls. The air smelled like smoke and ink. People who visited said the silence in the room was scarier than shouting. Here, Stalin spent hours reading reports about food, factories, the army, and secret police. Nothing was too small. He even read how many shoes were made in a city, or how many tons of steel were moved by train. And then there were the lists. Every day, the NKVD, the secret police, gave Stalin names of people to be arrested, sent away, or killed. He didn't skip them. He read each one, sometimes writing notes in the corners. One red check mark from him could mean life or death. Some nights, he crossed out a name and saved someone. Other times, he added more. Leaders were scared to see their names on any note from Stalin, even for small things. His handwriting could change their whole life. He also signed off on everything. Roads, tanks, school books, even fairy tales for kids were changed to match Soviet beliefs. At one point, he even rewrote parts of movie scripts himself. But Stalin didn't only use paper. He also ruled by phone. He made many calls, day and night, to leaders and generals. He liked hearing their voices and hearing their fear before deciding what to do. For Stalin, his office wasn't about daily tasks. It was about total control. One phone call from Stalin could end your life or save it. No warning, no second chance, just the sound of the phone clicking off. Stalin didn't just use papers and meetings to rule. He used the phone. He made sure his top people, ministers, generals, and police were always nervous. His calls could come at midnight, 2 a.m., even 4 a.m. And when Stalin called, no one let it ring more than once. He asked simple questions in a quiet voice. How many trains left Kiev yesterday? How much grain was moved this week? If you didn't know the answer, you got scared. Because Stalin never shouted. He didn't need to. His silence was worse. He also wrote short notes on important papers. Sometimes it was just a red check mark. Other times, one cold word. Shoot. Or 10 years. No trial, no reason, just one word in red ink. People in the Kremlin feared Stalin's red pencil more than bullets. He kept secret lists even of people close to him and waited for the moment to remove them. And he never forgot. Even many years later, he would bring up tiny mistakes as if they had happened yesterday. What made it worse was that you never knew. One day, Stalin might send you a thank you note. The next day, you disappeared and no one said your name again. In Stalin's world, fear was not an accident. It was a tool. And the phone? It was the wire that everyone had to walk across very, very carefully. Stalin didn't rule alone, but he made sure everyone around him felt alone. His group of top men, his inner circle, included people like Beria, Molotov, Mikoyan, and Khrushchev. These were powerful men who helped run the country. They controlled armies, factories, and arrests. In public, they smiled in pictures, raised glasses to Stalin at dinners, and called him great in their speeches. But in private, they were afraid of him. Stalin had one rule: no one was safe, not even old friends. He gave people important jobs to keep them close, but reminded them that he could take it all away at any time. One example, he signed the order to kill Nikolai Yezhov, the head of the secret police, and then had his picture removed from old photos. Meetings with Stalin were full of stress. People spoke carefully. A bad joke could be deadly. A long pause could be taken the wrong way. At dinner, some men practiced how to laugh ahead of time just to make sure they didn't make a mistake. Stalin also made people wait for him. He'd call a meeting at 1 a.m., then show up at 3 just to show who was boss. When he arrived, he might make people drink, sing songs, or sit in silence for hours. He watched closely who looked too confident, who looked scared, and who looked like they were thinking too much. He trusted no one, Khrushchev said, not even himself. Stalin's fear didn't come and go. It was part of the system. And the closer you sat to Stalin's table, the more dangerous your seat became. Stalin didn't go out to party. He made the party come to him, and no one could say no. Almost every night, around midnight, Stalin had dinner in his private rooms at the Kremlin or one of his country houses. These weren't short meals. They were long nights with drinks, heavy food from Georgia, and hours of fake laughter. Some dinners lasted until 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning. The guests were always different leaders, generals, artists, and scientists, but they all had one thing in common. They couldn't leave unless Stalin let them, and they couldn't say no to the invite. Saying no looked bad and might get you in trouble. At the table, Stalin acted like a fun host. He told stories, made rude jokes, poured drinks, and often made others drink more than they wanted. Saying no was dangerous. He watched everything. How people held their glasses, how they laughed, who they laughed at, who didn't laugh at all. One man said, "People at the table laughed, not because it was funny, but because they wanted to stay alive." When Stalin was in a bad mood, the dinners turned scary. He would insult people, bring up their old mistakes, or ask political questions with no safe answer. Some guests went to dinner and never came back. Even Beria, the head of the secret police, feared these nights. Because in Stalin's world, a toast could be a trap, and there were no second chances. For Stalin, the dinner table wasn't about friendship. It was a show, and everyone else was trying not to be removed from the script. To the public, Stalin was called the father of nations. But to his own children, he was cold and far away. He had 3 children, 1 from his first wife and 2 from his second. But Stalin didn't show much love at home. He was strict, quiet, and quick to judge. He once said, "I trust no one, not even my own son." His first wife, Kato, died young. Stalin cried at her funeral and said, "With her died my last warm feelings for people." After that, something inside him seemed to close off. His second wife, Nadezhda, lived with him while he was rising to power. But life with Stalin was hard. He ignored her in public, made fun of her in private, and treated her badly at home. In 1932, after a big fight, she took her own life with a pistol. The official story said she died from being sick. Stalin never spoke of her again. His children lived with the pressure of being Stalin's kids. His son Yakov tried hard to make him proud, but Stalin once said, "He can't even shoot straight." Later, when Yakov was captured by the Nazis during World War II, Stalin refused to make a deal to save him. Yakov died in a prison camp. His daughter Svetlana was treated more kindly, but only when she obeyed him. Later, she left the country and moved to the West. Stalin's government then tried to erase her name from public records. At dinners and big events, Stalin acted like a strong, loving father. But behind closed doors, family life was cold, quiet, and full of fear. He could lead an army, but he couldn't keep his own family together. When the dinners ended and the guests went home, Stalin didn't go to sleep right away. He walked back and forth, he smoked, he remembered everything. Even when it was quiet, Stalin's mind didn't stop. He walked in circles through his office or garden, thinking deeply. He didn't sleep on a regular schedule and sometimes didn't sleep at all. Guards often heard him walking at night, still dressed, talking to himself, with a lit cigarette in his hand. He didn't trust anyone, and he hated surprises. That's why he had many bedrooms and often changed where he slept. No one knew for sure where he was. Even the cooks didn't know which kitchen to use until the last minute. Late at night, Stalin read not just reports and spy files, but also history books. And if he didn't like what he read, he had it changed. Stalin didn't just try to control the future, he tried to change the past. He told people to remove names from school books, change stories, and make it look like he had always been Lenin's best friend, even though that wasn't true. Old photos were changed, people he had killed were erased from pictures, speeches were rewritten to give him credit for ideas that were never his. And if the truth didn't match his story, he just made a new story. These quiet hours were not calm. This was when Stalin did his deepest work protecting how people saw him, watching for enemies, and building a version of history where he was always the hero. He was afraid of being forgotten, or worse, being corrected. So he changed the story, one lie at a time. Joseph Stalin didn't die in a big, dramatic way. He died alone, on the floor of his own home. In March 1953, Stalin didn't wake up at his usual late time. He didn't call anyone. No orders, no shouting, just silence. His guards waited afraid to check, but also afraid not to. When they finally went into his room, they found Stalin lying on the floor near the couch. He had a stroke hours earlier, probably around 4 a.m. in the morning. He had wet himself, couldn't talk, and could hardly move. But no one called a doctor right away. Why? Because they thought it might be a trap. Just the year before, Stalin had arrested many doctors. He believed they were trying to kill him in what became known as the doctor's plot. Now, when he really needed help, no one wanted to go first. It took almost a full day before doctors came. By then, it was too late. Stalin died a few days later, still surrounded by scared men. Some cried. Some said nothing. Some, like Beria, were even seen smiling when no one was watching. After Stalin's death, the whole country was shaken. People cried in the streets not only because he was dead, but because they were afraid of what would happen next. His daily life, the late-night meals, the red pencil, the quiet phone calls was over. But the fear he created didn't go away. He left behind a changed history, a broken future, and a country shaped by one man's deep need to control everything, even time. In life, Stalin trusted no one. And in death, he left behind a country that trusted nothing. Stalin ruled through silence, fear, and a red pencil. His daily life wasn't loud, it was deadly. What would you do if Stalin called at 2 a.m.? Tell us in the comments. And if you liked this video, hit like and subscribe for more true stories from history's darkest rooms. Thanks for watching.